internet. It's time once again for Gaming with Max Von Puppet. That's me. As you can see, today we're going to talk about the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition Players Handbook, just like I said in my last video. Yes, I do actually try to keep my promises when I can. So, let's just dive right in, shall we? You know, in my last video, I spent an awful lot of time talking about the artwork and how much I loved the artwork for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. And I gotta say, I really do. It's really, really good. So I'm gonna start off talking about this cover right here, because I think, as much as the artwork in this cover really rocks, it's really nice artwork, it's really cool, it's got this really neat frost giant with a party fighting it, it's neat, I have to say, I'm a little bit disappointed in it. Here's why. I don't think it's as iconic as it could be. The 5th edition starter set, as you saw, had this really iconic cover with the green dragon. And you know, go back to other editions. The 1st edition game had the awesomest, most iconic cover ever with that red demon statue and the two thieves trying to steal the ruby eye. And then 3rd edition had those really cool books that were all done up to look like old tomes of power or magic or something. And those were really cool. And they just really stood out. You knew what you were playing when you grabbed those books. This one, I don't really think captures the essence of Dungeons & Dragons nearly as well as any of the other covers I've just discovered. It's, like I said, the artwork is really good. It's not, you know, horrible or anything. I like it. It's just not as iconic as I was hoping. So, little bit, you know, as much as I love the artwork in this game, little bit disappointed with the cover artwork on the Player's Handbook. I think the cover artwork for the Monster Manual might have made a bit better cover for the Player's Handbook. It's just much more, I don't know, much more fitting. It's much more appropriate. It's much more what I think about when I think of Dungeons & Dragons. That well, you'll see that when I do my review of the Monster Manual, but I think it's just a much better cover all around than this one is. It's just kind of, this is just kind of a little awkward. It's just, you know, are they floating in the air while they fight him? Maybe they've got a fly spell cast on him. I suppose that would work too. But I mean, it's just kind of weird. I would have rather the Player's Handbook just had a straight up dragon on it. You know, something like that. Or maybe even like some kind of a lich or something that they could be fighting. The frost giant just strikes me as weird. But anyway, I'm rambling. So let's get into the game itself. Let's talk about the game. I'm not going to open up the book to show you what's inside of it, although I have mentioned the artwork a lot. Again, if you want, just if you haven't bought the book yet, go to the game store and flip through it and just look at the artwork. The artwork is fantastic. It's totally worth getting the book for just for the artwork. It's really, really good. But let's talk about the game itself. So, stuff in 5th edition that I really like. I want to say again, I know I've mentioned it before in other games, other videos that I've done, that I have played pretty much every edition of Dungeons & Dragons ever published. Way back in 1st edition, I played that. You know, just when I was a little fuzzball, we played that. I played 2nd edition a little bit. I wasn't particularly fond of 2nd edition, so I don't really have a lot of great memories of that game. But it wasn't, you know, it wasn't horrible. It was mostly still 1st edition, so you know, it was pretty good. And 3rd edition, I loved 3rd edition. 3rd edition was one of my favorite systems ever. It was really great. I liked it a lot. 4th edition, I played 4th edition. I ran a campaign for that for a whole year. We had a lot of fun with it. It had its limitations, and I know a lot of people out there, you know, it's particularly popular right now to pick on 4th edition. And you know, I have to say, I enjoyed 4th edition. It was totally different from everything else. It was not meant to be 3rd edition plus. It wasn't supposed to be what eventually became Pathfinder. For those of you who really liked 3rd edition and wanted to keep playing 3rd edition, Pathfinder was your go-to, and that's great. But, you know, people who wanted something different but was still Dungeons & Dragons, 4th edition worked out well. And I know some of you out there are going to argue with me and say 4th edition didn't feel like Dungeons & Dragons to you, and, you know, that's your opinion, and that's great. You know, you're allowed that opinion, but I'm going to respectfully disagree with you. I played it a lot, and 4th edition was very much Dungeons & Dragons. So it still felt very much like Dungeons & Dragons while we were playing. It didn't really feel all that different from Dungeons & Dragons when we were playing. It felt, in fact, it felt a lot more like 1st edition Dungeons & Dragons than 3rd edition ever did. But that's neither here nor there. 5th edition, I've been playing it for a while now. I haven't played a ton of it compared to a lot of other people. My gaming group now, we're all a little older. We can only get together maybe once a month, so that's what we do. We play once a month. Sometimes we may have to skip a month. December was a particularly hard month for us to get together in, but it happens. So, but we play. We've been playing, and we started off with the play test, and you saw my video on that, and I really liked the play test. And now we moved on to the actual 5th edition game. So let's get into the game itself. The game is, first off, let's talk about the book. The book is pretty well organized. I like the organization for the book. It moves pretty smoothly. I have actually read this entire book from cover to cover. I know that's a little awkward, but I really wanted to do that for this particular edition. And it's well organized. Everything makes sense where it's located. It's easy to move from one section to another and make the transition pretty easily. Everything's pretty easy to find when you're looking for it. And I like that part of it. The type font is easy to read, the layout is easy to read, and everything in it makes a lot of sense. I didn't find a lot of typos while I was reading it or anything like that. And I mention that because, when there's been other role-playing games I've read where there have been a lot of typos and that kind of stuff, it just kind of makes the game look a little less professional. This is a highly professional-looking game. Plus, there's an index in the back. And that's super important to me. I love games with an index in the back. It makes it so much easier when you're looking for a particular topic to find just that one topic. On to the specific rules. There is 5th edition is it went back to 3rd edition as kind of a base for the game, but it kept some stuff from 4th edition, which I really like, and it also incorporated some stuff from 1st and 2nd edition into the game too, so it really does have that kind of overall feel of some of the games that you used to play. So like I've had people who only ever played 1st edition come in and play my 5th edition game and tell me that it wasn't all that awkward or different from what they used to play. A little bit. I mean, some things, like there's no Thako, so you're going to have to, let that go. Thako's gone, it's never coming back, and thank God. But mostly they felt like they were still playing the game that they used to play. And, 3rd edition lovers love it because it's still basically the basic core of the game feels a lot like 3rd edition. I'm not going to say it's exactly the same, it's not, but it feels a lot like 3rd edition, so that's good. I like that. And for 4th edition players, the big thing that you all had in 4th edition was powers. Powers are gone, they're not there anymore. But some of the things from 4th edition that they kept that I like is things like magic spells. Now there's 0 level spells. I mean, there were 0 level spells in 1st edition too, and I mean in 3rd edition as well. But they're in 5th edition now. There's cantrips work a lot like at-will powers did in 4th edition. So if you're a wizard, you're not fire and forget, and then you're done for the day. You're not going to shoot off your one, your first level wizard spell is going to shoot off your one sleep or one magic missile and then be done. You've got options. You've got things you can do over and over and over again. So when you're done casting your actual spells, you've still got those cantrips, and they're useful cantrips. They're not like, color, like little color distractions. I was going to say color spray, but that's not what I'm talking about. I was going to say they're not like, noises or, just little minor, cantrips used to be just little minor things that didn't really have a good effect on the game, but now they're actual spells now. So, and I like that. It works out pretty well. And then there's new rules in the game that I also really like. There's, for example, there is the advantage-disadvantage rule. You may have heard of this if you've been keeping up with 5th edition at all. And I really like this. So the idea is if you have advantage, then that means you get to roll 2 dice, 2d20, and pick the higher of the 2. And if you have disadvantage, you roll 2d20 and pick the lower of the 2. It's a simple mechanic, but it works out fabulously well. And if you're a dungeon master, it also gives you this fantastic core mechanic that lets you make up rules on the fly. So, your thief is doing something that results in him tripping because he failed his roll, and so you can just say, you tripped, so now you're at disadvantage on your attack roll. It's pretty easy. I like it a lot. It's fantastic. it's made things new and unique, and sometimes pretty tense if you get disadvantage on things, or pretty exciting when you have advantage on things. I like it a lot. It works out pretty well. And another thing I really like about this edition is the way the character classes work with the skill systems that's involved. So now, the way this works now is, like in 4th edition, you don't need to have specific classes in order to make the game work. You're not saying, like, you don't have to say, we need a cleric. We have to have a cleric, or it's just we're not going to survive. We need a cleric. We need that healer, or we need to have a rogue. We got to have that pickpocket. We got to have somebody who can open locks and find traps. You don't need those things anymore. You don't have to have them in there, because there's most spellcasters will get some kind of a healing spell, and lots of other people can access pick locks and find and remove trap skills now. So you're not limited to those classes. Those classes now can do other things too, which is really cool. And also, they also kind of took a ability from 4th edition, the healing during rests. So you can take rests, short rests and long rests, and during that time you can heal. Now it's done through hit dice. So your hit dice are attached to your level, and then you can spend those to heal yourself during rests. So in between encounters, you can take rests and spend your hit dice to heal yourself. And so that also aids with not needing to have healing spells around all the time. And I really like that. It works out pretty well. The combat system works out pretty well. It's, like I said, largely still like 3rd edition. The spell casting is still fire and forget, but with the addition of 0 level spells, it works out pretty well. I overall really like it. I'm not saying I am a huge fan of fire and forget, but it works well for this game, and I don't have a problem with it either. So I like that. Let me see what else. It's just overall, it's a really good game. I like it. Backgrounds. Yes, let's talk about backgrounds for a minute. This game adds a really cool new thing to the character creation option that I really like, and it's backgrounds and personality traits and bonds, and there's a 4th one that I forgot what it's ideals. That's it, ideals. And they're all things that are designed to help attach your character to the campaign setting, or just give your character an interesting story that it may not have had originally, and it makes your character more than just a collection of stats. It's more than just a collection of numbers with some equipment and stuff like that. It actually gives your character a little bit of a story and a little bit of a personality, and it gives your Dungeon Master hooks to play off of when you're playing the game. And as the Dungeon Master of my campaign, I personally really appreciate that. It's really a cool new thing, especially for those players who have trouble coming up with the backgrounds for their characters. This is a neat way to get a quick jump start on that. And the neat thing about it is they're pretty, I don't want to say generic, but they're pretty open-ended. So it's not like two people who have the same background and personality traits are going to be the same person. They're not. You can come up with a unique story that makes your character unique, and that works out pretty well. What do I not like? Because I know that question is going to be asked. What do I not like? Well, there really isn't a lot, to be honest with you. I like pretty much everything about this system. Is it the perfect system out there? No, of course not. It's Dungeons & Dragons. It does what Dungeons & Dragons does. And let's be honest, Dungeons & Dragons is best at things like dungeon crawls. So there's not specifically a lot of roleplay rules in here that are designed to get you to, go into court intrigue or stuff like that. Okay, sorry about that. Phone rang. The perils of recording in your own house. But anyway, it's focused a lot on, exploring dungeons, fighting monsters, gaining treasures, leveling up. It does suffer from things that all versions of Dungeons & Dragons suffer from, like exponential hit point growth, which is something I've always, as a DM, had trouble with, because it means that you purposely have to continue to find harder and harder monsters for your players to fight. And while I don't mind finding more and more difficult challenges for my players to fight, I don't like that I have to have different, tougher monsters. I mean, like, if I'm making my bad guy use an orc army, at some point the orcs just become even less than cannon fodder. My PCs can just slice through them like knife through butter, and it's kind of boring, and I hate that. But you know, fourth edition I mean, fifth edition. Sorry, fifth edition. You know, it still suffers from some of that kind of stuff, but it's Dungeons and Dragons, and I wouldn't want it to be anything else. It's still Dungeons and Dragons, and it's probably my favorite edition to date. Yes, I'm going to go out on a limb and make that claim. Fifth edition so far is my favorite edition to date. So it's a good game. It retails, this book is probably about $50, which is probably a little bit pricey. No, I'm not even probably. It's a little bit pricey. But especially when its contemporaries are probably going to be around in the $35 range. But you can pick it up online for cheaper. I still, of course, recommend you go to your friendly local game store and buy it in person. It's always best to support your local game stores. But for $50, yeah, you might want to buy it online where you can get it cheaper. But still worth the price. Still worth it. It's a great game. If you're a player, this is the only book you need, and I kind of like that. Even if you're a dungeon master, if you're new to dungeon mastering, this is probably 80 to 90% of everything you need. Yeah, I'd go 80. It's probably about 80% of everything you need. You're going to want the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Monster Manual, especially if you're making up your own adventures. But if you're buying the pre-made adventures, you can get away with just this and the adventures for, you know, probably quite a while. It's totally worth having just this book. So I highly recommend it. If you're new to role-playing game, this is a good way to start. It's easy to jump into. It does a good job of explaining things and walks you through character creations with examples. And overall, I think it's a good first game to get into. It's what Dungeons and Dragons has always been. It's a gateway drug into the rest of the role-playing game society. But even outside of that, it's a fun and fantastic game to play all by itself, and totally worth it. Like, it's the only game I'm playing right now, role-playing wise. It's the only campaign I'm running is a Dungeons & Dragons campaign. And speaking of which, I will post a link again to my Dungeons & Dragons campaign below, so you can go check it out on Obsidian Portal. If you've never used Obsidian Portal, go to it. It's a great site for running a game on. You know, maybe one day I'll do a review of that, because it is worth talking about. Obsidian Portal's great. But 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons Players Handbook, great book, well laid out, a great writing style, easy to follow, great rules, lots of fun, totally worth picking it up. And that's pretty much all I have to say about this. A lot shorter than my rambling review of the starter set, I realize, but you know, I said most of the stuff I have to say in that one. A lot of it would repeat here, so I'm not going to say it again. But 5th edition, I love it. Great, go get it. So until next time, keep playing games. Bye!